Hey sentient beings, welcome to another edition of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. I have another great guest coming in from near Philadelphia, John Vibes. He's a friend of Derek Bros, a past Anarchast guest who we had on quite a while ago, and they just finished a book called The Conscious Resistance, Reflections on Anarchy and Spirituality, which I seem to be really getting into the spirituality thing. If you look back at past Anarchast episodes, and please don't look back at any before 100 because I was really awkward and didn't get really used to doing these things until well after that. But I was mostly talking about the politics and the philosophy of anarchy, and spirituality really never came up at all. And I was just looking back at my past 10 or 20 Anarchasts, and there's a whole bunch that are really on spirituality. There was Max Egan, Zen Gardner, Mark Passio, you could say is very related to that as well, about this awakening. And John Vibes is very into this, and he's got an excellent book called The Conscious Resistance. We're going to be talking all about that and all about how spirituality relates to anarchism and freedom, which is the most important, and to actually achieving an awakening, a consciousness, and actually understanding what's going on and becoming free. So that we're going to get into all of that. But first thing I have to ask you, John, is how did you become an anarchist?
Well, I've more or less been an anarchist my entire life, but I haven't actually been a voluntarist until the past 5 years or so. So let me kind of explain that a little bit.
How do you define the difference between voluntarist and anarchist? Because I consider them pretty much the same thing.
Well, they are pretty much the same thing, but growing up I was always an anti-authoritarian. I always got the whole no rulers thing. But, you know, growing up poor, it was really easy to slip into a lot of the communist rhetoric, you know, especially that's drilled into you in public school. And I hated public school from the jump. They put me in there in kindergarten, and I knew what was up right away. I was like, you know, so I didn't have an understanding of economics until the past few years. But I've always been an anti-authoritarian. Anybody who had any authority over me as a child, it was a nightmare for them, whether it be teachers or family. Whatever, I was always bucking the system in one way or another. And, you know, I would read and research, and, you know, throughout school, most of my time was spent ignoring whatever was going on in school, doing my own research into things that I was interested in, and, you know, drinking a lot of alcohol and doing a lot of drugs to just put my mind away from, you know, the torture in there. Because really, for somebody who understands that public school is bad while they're in it, it's a very traumatizing experience. And it was for me. So that was kind of where I started, you know, my relationship with substances and things like that. That it took me many years to kind of get a hold on and learn how to walk that path responsibly, let's just say. And to explain how I got into voluntarism, when I was researching my first book, Alchemy of the Timeless Renaissance, which I was actually told to write through a DMT experience, I started to get to the end of the book, and I put all this, you know, mountains of conspiracy stuff in there, which I was researching, and I knew that I needed to get a better hold on economics. So I started researching economics, and from some of the conspiracy research that I was getting into, I was seeing that the Rockefellers were socialists, and all these aristocratic families were socialist. I found out that Karl Marx had very close ties to British bankers and people that I knew were totally evil. So I started looking into what is going on here. Then I stumbled across Austrian economics and some of the more propertarian anarchist theories, and ever since then it's really been like a whole new take on freedom and anarchism, because before I just had this general idea of, you know, damn the man and screw authority, but now I actually understand physically, you know, how human action works, and what non-aggression is, and you know, how trade can benefit us. So that's why I make the differentiation where I've always been an anarchist loosely, but I didn't really understand the philosophies of it until the past couple of years when I started researching my own books.
Oh, that's great. That's interesting to hear your perspective. I never really thought about it, that economics is really important to know if you want to understand what real anarchism is. But I think I've always known it because I always have economics people on, and I actually came to anarchism through economics because I went through the tech bubble collapse and I didn't understand what was going on. And I did my own research because you're never going to get this stuff from the mainstream, from most universities, or definitely not on TV. And very quickly came across the creature from Jekyll Island, and what's going on here? And then read more, look into more, and holy cow, there's a lot more going on than I knew. And so we just had Anthony Davies was on I think the second to last episode of Anarchast, and he's an economics guy. So we're just talking about economics. So it's good to hear from you that it's important that we do spread knowledge about economics, because it's an important facet to this. The other important facet, though, is spirituality and actually fixing yourself in order to fix the world. And this is a big part of your book, and I find it incredibly interesting. And you also brought up DMT. I just did my first ayahuasca ceremony a few months ago. It took me a few months to figure out what happened, and it's an interesting story about that, because when I first did ayahuasca, I asked a lot of people, I said, what's it like? Because, you know, I'm always so curious, and no one can ever tell you. You just have to do it. But one thing they said was, you know, once you do it, you're going to have to take some time and think about what happened. And I'm like, what does that even mean? But now I know. It took me a couple months of like, what did that mean? And then it all clicked last weekend. And as soon as it clicked, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I'm trying to go this weekend again to another one now that I figured out what happened on the first one. So I've just brought up a ton of stuff there. I don't know if you want to talk about the book or ayahuasca or DMT or spirituality. Anything you want to talk about, just go right ahead.
Well, we can get into a bit of that. I really did enjoy your article this week about what you learned from your ayahuasca experience. That was really cool. But yeah, first I kind of want to establish what spirituality is, because a lot of people, they might be listening to this and they might say, you know, oh, you know, do you want me to go to church, or do you want me to follow some specific set of guidelines, or are you putting forward some sort of new religion? And that's not where I'm coming from at all. That's not where me and Derek are coming from with this book at all. There's one really awesome phrase that Derek coined during a talk of his a couple years ago that was, what was it? Statism is to anarchy what religion is to spirituality. So basically, you know, anarchy is freedom in the physical sense, and we believe that spirituality is freedom in the emotional, spiritual sense. So basically, anything that a person believes about the beyond, what exists beyond the five senses, that's their personal interpretation, and that is their spirituality. And that is what I'm trying to advocate. I'm trying to advocate for there to be 6 billion, 7 billion different spiritualities on this planet that everybody holds on their own. Maybe some people may have a certain more atheistic perspective, but as long as they recognize that we can't prove what happens when we die, so there's no sense in arguing about it. There is sense in talking about it and having conversations and picking people's brains, but you know, let's not kill each other over things we can't prove. It's absolutely ridiculous that we're doing this in the 21st century now. So that's what I'm trying to really get across, is that we need to look beyond just the 5 sense realm, because as you know from taking ayahuasca, you were probably shown shapes and colors that you didn't even know were possible. I've never taken ayahuasca, but DMT, it's, you know, a very minuscule mini version of that. Here in America, a lot of the people that deal in ayahuasca, like, you really got to watch out for them, and they're not as trustworthy as the people that might be in Mexico or Peru or things like that. So I've really been holding off until I'm able to get down there to somewhere genuine and you know, do it legitimately. but you know, you're shown all these things that you didn't even know were possible through these experiences, and it really opens your eyes to the fact that we're only getting fractions of information about what's happening in reality. And, you know, we can benefit greatly from trying to explore whatever is beyond, even if that is the depths of our own minds, even if we're exploring our own emotions, our own minds. I don't think it really is important to get into whether the experiences that we have on psychedelic drugs or meditation or whatever. I don't think it's important to parse out whether these experiences are real or not, because they still have real life consequences, as you've learned last month. You know, even though it took you a while to figure it out, it still allowed you to reflect on life. And really, the way that I read your article, it kind of seemed like the universe was speaking to you in a way. And that might sound a little bit too far out there for some people, but I feel like sometimes with, not even with taking drugs, but just learning about things, like the synchronicity, as some of your viewers may be unaware, is the process of really amazing coincidences that come into our lives that just are too weird to be coincidences. And once you kind of learn that maybe there's some connection with that, they start popping into your life constantly. And it becomes even more hard to turn your back away from it. So what I'm getting at is, there's a lot more going on than we see, feel, touch, and hear. And I think that it's really important to consider what else is out there, what else is inside of us that can't be necessarily proven by modern science. And I think that's how we learn, that's how we grow, and that's how we evolve as a species. And I think that this process is needed for us to achieve anarchism, because we got a lot of messed up people running around out there, and we can't even reach them half the time when we try to talk to them about these issues, because they're so wrapped up in their own heads about the things that they've been taught, and they just can't get on that level to just clear their mind and just really logically assess things.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been thinking a lot about that. I had Mark Passio on a couple of weeks ago, and I'm kind of ashamed now that I didn't know about him more. When I first, throughout, you bring up synchronicity and people coming into your life, these energies that seem to come and go, and I pay attention to them, because I find that if something keeps pinging you from different locations, there might be something there. So, but when I first heard about Mark Passio, I looked him up, and it said he had this whole 9-hour speech on natural law, and I didn't even watch it, and I just assumed he was talking about that free man on the land sort of a thing, and I'm not that interested in that stuff. It might be interesting, but I've never had a free man on the land person on Anarchast. I just don't, it hasn't struck me that using the state's legal operations and going to court in the court with the state judge and the state prosecutor and trying to turn it around on them, I don't see that work. If it works, great, but I haven't been drawn to that too much. So I kind of put him out of my paying attention, and then I had him on, and it was almost like, whoa, like, how did I not know about what he was talking about for all this time? And actually last night I was sitting there watching one of his videos, and it was like, I started at 2 in the morning, because I was like, I like to watch or read before I go to bed and think about things and see, just sort of relax after a long day of work. And but I'm still learning, it never stops. And I watched one of his videos. It was on the trivium, which I'm now incredibly interested in. I couldn't turn it off. I was up till like 5 in the morning, and I'm like, I have to sleep. I can do this again tomorrow, just sleep, but this is so interesting, so fascinating. So it's so interesting to me that all these people and all the things that they're bringing to light, and how they're so many people you brought up, how they're just not able to see because they've got all this information and they're not able to, and I've watched this through the trivium, I'm starting to understand why they can't process it properly, because they've never really been taught how to think. And they've actually been taught the opposite, just how to memorize and how to just listen and stuff like that to wrong information. So it is very hard to connect with a lot of those people. And do you have is that basically your sort of solution, is we have to get those people more into these sort of spirituality or ayahuasca and stuff, but they're not going to listen to us. So my question to you is, how do we crack those people that are just super blind, or do we just not even bother trying?
I think that there are a lot of people who are lost. There are absolutely a lot of people who are lost and who are never going to come back because, you know, this system of brainwashing and indoctrination, they start early. They've been mastering this thing for centuries. And a lot of these people are pretty messed up. Now, I feel that there is possibility with these psychedelic experiences to shake people out of their slumber. I mean, I know with myself, it has pushed me in a definitely a more clear direction, a more positive direction. It has opened my mind to a lot of things. It has cured addiction issues with me, and I've witnessed the same thing happen in other people. So I think that the psychedelic drugs can definitely be a catalyst, and the kind of spiritual mentality, it makes people realize that you know, even though as an individualist, our ultimate deal is we have the right to protect ourselves and fulfill ourselves so long as we don't hurt anybody else, and I still fully agree with that, but at the same time, it is good to have a certain level of tranquility and peace and caring and sharing and all that good stuff on a voluntary level. And I feel that having a spiritual mindset encourages that. And I feel that that is definitely necessary for us to live in a free society, because all of this forced charity that we have now and stuff like that, that needs to be replaced by voluntary, genuine charity. As far as reaching these people, I think some of them can be saved, and it's a matter of just putting out this philosophy and trying to get people to look deep into themselves and fix themselves. Now, on a more long-term solution, our children are going to get us out of this. That's where it really is, because they are a clean slate, you know what I mean? And they're the future. We're already growing old, you know what I mean? We're already becoming obsolete. We see it every time, you know, one of our rock stars becomes 80, or some movie that we watched when we were kids is a classic. We know that our time is passing, and our children are going to be the one to carry this torch. And that is why, you know, even though I don't have children, and a lot of people criticize me because I try to put forward perspectives on parenting without having children, I still think that, you know, children growing up peacefully and, you know, in free settings will create a free population in the future. And I really think that is our big solution as far as fixing the mentality in people. And, you know, I mean, I talk to a lot of people who are sometimes in their 60s and stuff, and they're entrenched in their, you know, perspectives, and they're not coming out of that. And, you know, they don't necessarily need to put it bluntly, because these children that are coming up, even though a lot of them are brainwashed, you look on YouTube, there's kids telling off their teachers, there's 12-year-olds giving TED Talks about marijuana and homeschooling. I see a lot of hope in the next generation.
That brings up a question I'm curious about, and maybe you understand this question or maybe you don't, but I'm going to ask it anyway, is why do we care so much about changing this? You brought up that we're getting older, and you always hear that thing, and a lot of people say this, and I always found it sounded a little odd when people would say, I'm doing it so my children have a good life. Because I know most people are quite selfish. And when I hear that, especially from I can tell these people are very closed off, very status, very selfish sort of people, I can tell they're just lying. They're like, no, they want a better world for them. But I wanted this sort of a world before I even had kids. And the fact that I have kids now hasn't changed anything. I still just want to improve this. Well, is there a bigger sort of a scheme of things here? Are we, like, is there reincarnation? Is that why we're sort of like, we better get this fixed? Like, I feel this like drive to get this sort of fixed for some reason. I can't quite explain it because I'm quite a rational, logical person, but there's something inside of me that's like, I have to get this information out there. I have to do this. I wake up early to do it. I work all day to do it. Is there a bigger picture to why we feel the need or want to try to fix the problems in the world today?
That's an awesome question, and I think that there are a couple different answers. I personally do believe in reincarnation, but as I said earlier, that's my personal interpretation, and I would never force that on somebody else. But I do believe through certain experiences that I've had, that I've been here before, that I've been in this situation before, fighting this battle before many times. I've had that intuition. And now, as to why we do this, I think that as any creature on this planet, this is where we live, and we have a responsibility to it. And I think that's innate within us. Now, everybody that is born into this, they look around and they see what is. This is just the way it is. Nothing's wrong with this situation. But then when you kind of unplug yourself from the matrix and then you see that all this stuff is going wrong, it's incredibly hard to run away from that and not want to help. It's kind of like watching a train wreck that you know you may have, some kind of possibility of stopping, and so you have to. Now, whether that innate drive comes from the fact that our soul knows that we're going to be back here again, or whether it's just a natural human instinct to preserve our habitat. You know what I mean? And our habitat is certainly getting destroyed in more ways than one by this system of oppression that has kind of grown up around us.
Yeah, you brought up the Matrix, and I just said to Doug Casey the other day, I was just chatting with him, and I said, the more I've been learning, the more I look at the Matrix not as being a fiction movie. It seems like the more I think about it, the Matrix almost is what I've been learning about what life is. But my question to you is, I don't know if you know the answer again, but I'm going to ask it again, is what is this? What is life? Why are we here? How did this happen? And you sort of answered to some extent why we act the way we do and why we're trying to affect these changes. But when did this start, and when's it going to end? Or is this timeless or spaceless? And even then, why or how or who are we?
I've been racking my brain with that one forever, man. And I don't even know. It's something that I literally ponder on every day, and there's so many different possibilities, but I honestly do believe, in short, that we are here. I don't know where here is. I don't know where Earth is, where the solar system, if we're a germ on the thumb of some giant dude or something. I don't even have a clue. But at the same time, I can feel that we are here as kind of, custodians of this place that we live and of each other. And I feel that our species has majorly lost our way in that. And, maybe even other species too. There has been debates on some of Mark Passio's shows, actually, about if animals were in a higher state of consciousness at one time and fell from that. I mean, I'm not sure of that. And one thing that I've been trying to figure out for a while is there's a lot of people saying that humans are evolving to a higher state of consciousness, and then there's a lot of people who say that we were at a higher state of consciousness at one time and then there was some falling from grace now that we're crawling out of. And that is something I really, I've been pondering too, but there's no easy answer to. As far as how we got here, and this is going to sound weird to a lot of people, but the more I look into things, I feel like there is something really weird with humans being on this earth. I don't even know if we belong here. We are not like any other creature on this planet. It's just bizarre. And I feel like, you know, some of these people that say these far out things about us, you know, being some kind of alien colony or something like that, I would not rule that out. And maybe that's too far out for some of your listeners. It's even too far out for me. But the more I look into things, it seems like that's a lot more plausible than I ever thought.
Yeah, the more I look into things, the more I realize I don't know anything. It's like, it's amazing. And you were bringing up about here on Earth and do we belong here and things like that. It's like, are we aliens? Whenever someone says, is there aliens? I'm like, we're aliens. We live in outer space. Where do you think we are, right? And going back to your, higher and lower levels of consciousness and maybe animals are less than us. I actually think animals are more than us for the most part, from what I can tell. I've got all my dogs here. They are all meditating right now in a deep state of meditation. They're full of love. They never want to hurt anyone that they care about ever. They want to protect them. And that's all they care. And then there's food. And then they just love food. That's it. I wish here's my one right here. Let me bring him up. Hey, Mateo, Ben? Sorry, he was meditating. He's on his back. He's going to go into, now he's in downward facing dog. I think we should aspire to be more like dogs.
That's fantastic. Really, I love that perspective, and the fact that you say that they're meditating, I've never even thought about that before, but that's perfect.
Oh, you can see it in their eyes. They're not even like, here, let me get him out of his trance. Here we go. All right. Oh, sorry. Pardon. Yeah, see, he's still
groggy, yeah.
Yeah, a little groggy. Yeah, welcome back. How are you? Good. Now he kisses me. It's wonderful. We got to be more like that. I
agree.
So I think that
100%, man. And I think that it is a very good question of why are we seem significantly more crazier than our animal counterparts here on Earth. Why is that? And I think that they do have a lot together, and I think that instead of disrespecting the animals in the way that we do, that we should really look to them for guidance. And now, as we covered this kind of in our book, just because, I'm very strongly in support of giving more care to animals, stopping many of the mistreatments against them, but I'm not personally a vegan. I still am a meat eater. A lot of people I work closely with, like Mark Passio and Derek Brose, they are not meat eaters. They are either vegetarian or vegan. I think Derek's a vegetarian, while Mark may be vegan. I may be misspeaking. Either way, I know both of them are at least vegetarians. And me and Derek in our book, we say that it's extremely important to recognize that these animals are on an equal level with us, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're advocating some kind of eco-fascism or that everybody becomes a vegan or a vegetarian or something like that. It just means that we really need to assess how we treat and look at and respect the other living creatures on this planet.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually vegetarian for 7 years before I even knew what Anarchy was, and I was vegan for 2 years. And I just found at the time that it wasn't really working for my body, and I went back to just all meat diet, really. But then since I've been doing ayahuasca the first time, I reverted back to vegetarianism, just sort of almost, it just seemed natural. It was weird, but I've started eating meat again. But now since I'm going for another one, I'm going to revert back to vegetarianism. And I feel the same way as you. It's someone's own personal choice. I think that that we have to treat animals a lot better, that's for sure. But my own sort of goal with humanity is let's get the humans fixed first. Let's stop all the suffering in humanity, and then that would be so easy with the animals after that. Once people have gotten rid of all their problems, let's talk about to finish off like a bit more about your book, and also I want to bring up your conference, which just finished up in Philadelphia, called the Free Your Mind Conference. And I didn't realize, but Mark Passio started that conference, and then he sort of turned it over to you and a few others to manage it, as he didn't want to manage it or whatever it was. And I hear it was a great success. I hear that it was double what it was last year. And so there's definitely something rising here. And I think the same in Anarchapulco. I wasn't expecting there to be so many people here from all around the world. And it looks like next year it's going to be 2 to 3 times the crowd. So there's an awakening, a rising happening in what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, as far as the book goes, it's kind of the culmination of a couple of years of work between me and Derek. We actually met through synchronicity. It's really weird. He lives in Houston. I'm out here in the Maryland area, south of Philadelphia, north of Baltimore, and we had a mutual friend down in Virginia that was living in the same house as Adam Kokesh at the time, a couple of years ago. Derek was interning at Adam's house, and I went over to visit our mutual friend over there. Our mutual friend took us out to a concert and then went backstage and was hanging out with the bands all night. So then me and Derek, we didn't know each other, and we had the opportunity to kind of meet each other out there in the general admission area. And we started talking about how we were interested in voluntarism and shamanism and things like that. And it really was kind of weird because most of the anarchists you see out there are very into just the strictly rational perspective. They don't want to get into all that weird hoopla. And a lot of the people in the New Age community are afraid of looking at anything negative or anything that might be unpleasant. So they're afraid to delve into anarchy. So we really it's been a goal of ours to kind of bring these demographics together and bring these ideas together because we think that there's value in both of them. So we began writing this book. It's the first half of it is basically a breakdown of what we believe freedom is, what we believe spirituality is, kind of as I got into earlier with the issues beyond the 5 senses that can't necessarily be proven that we want to talk about philosophically. We talked about some healing things as far as like the plants that we were talking about, DMT, ayahuasca, and even some alternative methods like flotation tanks, meditation, and we kind of put forward a perspective on anarchy that is kind of an anarchy without adjectives, so to speak, but that rests on voluntarism. You know what I mean? So if people want to have their voluntary communes somewhere away from my private property, then they're fairly, you know, I'm happy to see them do that and experiment with that. That's completely fine. So then in the rest of the book, we get into a study of religion by religion throughout the world and how they are rooted in anti-authoritarianism. Jesus is really easy to lay out how he was an anarchist, you know, his historical character. And then we get into Islam, where we didn't know enough about Islam, so we took from Davi Barker's book, Voluntary Islam, we took a couple of essays that we thought were important. We covered Taoism and just many of the other religions of the world and how they all share this message of peace, freedom, and anti-authoritarianism until they were corrupted by political organizations and then became religions where it was this one-size-fits-all, you must follow these rules type scenario. Just as far as to wrap up on the conference, before I get into that, I wanted to tell everybody that the book is available for free to download, and if you want to order a hardback copy of it, it's just $5. And that could be found at theconsciousresistance.com/book. And yeah, we talked about Mark Passio, and I would consider him a mentor of mine, to be honest. I really look up to the guy. I think he is a very knowledgeable person and a very humble and down-to-earth person, which is very difficult to find in this day and age. And I mean, I feel blessed that I was a volunteer. I asked to speak one year, and I just wasn't able to get on the lineup. So I said, hey, I'm happy to come up and help out, do whatever I need to do to make this a success. So I drove up to Philadelphia, you know, for weeks, months, and then somebody dropped off the lineup, and I was able to get fit in that year anyway in an opening spot. So I talked about government controlling resources with specific monopolies, and that was one of my first big public talks. And myself and Bob Tuskin, who is a radio host and another one of the organizers of the conference, after that year's conference, Mark Passio said, hey, you know, I want to be able to dedicate more time to my presentations, and running this conference doesn't allow me to do that, you know. So he put the care of the conference into Bob Tuskin's hands and myself, and we've kind of just been running with it. And you know, we're definitely blessed for Mark's work, and I wholeheartedly believe that Mark's vision and dedication is the reason why it's so successful. And you know, we're happy to be going actually annually. It used to be a biannual thing, but after this year we decided we're going to do it every year, probably every April. And the real important thing about this is to bring a lot of different freedom-oriented topics and people together, because I love going out to every convention I possibly can. But I found that, you know, I'll go to a UFO convention and it's all UFO stuff, and I'll go to a holistic conference and it's all, you know, New Age organic food stuff, and I'll go to a libertarian conference and it'll be all economics. So what I love all these topics, but I think it's so important to bring all these people together, bring all these topics together, so all these people could hang out and, you know, have a couple drinks or whatever, and just realize, you know, we're all generally on the same page about this stuff, and maybe we even have a lot to learn from each other and teach one another. And I think that's important in this movement that we're in and how splintered everything is.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing that more and more. As I said before, I went to Pork Fest up in New Hampshire, and I was shocked at how many hippies were there. And because I'd come from this whole more economic side and things like that, anarcho-capitalist sort of side, where most of the people kind of are into making money or business or creating successful enterprises. And I went up there, and there was like hundreds of people playing hacky sack and the bongos and the drum circles, and they're like, yeah, man, you know, one day I just realized the non-aggression principle, man.
Yep, that's me, man. That's me.
Welcome aboard.
Are you going to be there this year?
That's you, yeah. No, I've actually decided not to go to the U.S. anymore for a number of different reasons. I don't
blame you.
Uncomfortable. So if you want to see me, you got to come down to Anarchapulco next January or February. We're just working on the dates right now.
I'll be there, man. Keep me posted.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like Mark really wants to come too. It was sort of weird when we finished our Anarchast with Mark. We were both sort of like shocked that we didn't know each other better. And he was like, yeah, wow, I didn't know how, you know, you seem amazing. And he said, your questions were so good. I was like, questions are easy. You had the answers. Like, you're amazing. How did I not know about you? So yeah, I'm hoping that even next year, we already got such a great lineup already. So it could be even way better than it was this year, which is really already really good. So we'll leave it at that. Check out the book. I haven't read through the whole thing. I'm super busy, but I have skimmed it, and there's a ton of great information in there. And I'm going to read it at some point when I have time, because I really want to get into some of the things that they brought up. So check it out. It's for free. Another greedy anarchist out there, another capitalist giving you stuff for free. And it's also, if you want the hardcover, for $5. So check that out. We'll have all the links down below. And definitely, and pass it along to your friends, the free book. If you like it, first read it, of course, because you don't want to just be passing off stuff you don't even know. But if you like it, pass it around to everybody, and just get this information out there. You probably won't get everyone woken up, but you might get a little bit of a glimpse glimmer of spark of hope of awakening freedom in their minds or the consciousness once again. So that's it. So like, subscribe, share to this channel, Anarchast. If you're listening on the radio, it's just anarchast.com, anarchast.com. And that's it for Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and anarchy.